Welcome back, and I am joined now by one of the world's great novelists, Nuruddin Farah. Nice to talk to you again. It was a few years ago that we last met.
It was indeed.
And you are still in these novels exploring your part of the world, but from different ways.
Yes. I often like to give the opportunity to different characters to have their say democratically.
Mm-hmm.
And one way of doing it is to change not only the thrust of the story,
Mm-hmm.
but also the characters who people the novels that I write. I find I learn a lot about, not only about myself, but also about the country. I make certain things clear for myself as I write about them. Yeah.
The country, of course, is Somalia, and it's a place that, for most of us, we hear about in the news for all the terrible things happening, right?
Yeah.
We hear about war, we hear about terror. You're writing about what's happening there. You're also writing about the diaspora, people who've left, like yourself. What is it that the world misses from just knowing the headlines?
Well, the world misses a narrative that is unfolding. Quite often, with backgrounds that are not obviously understood or heard about, because there's a lot of, interesting lives being led by people. When you consider that about a third of the population of Somalia are internally displaced, more than a third have left the country, and the whole place is in an upheaval. Now, it's that upheaval which occasionally, not all of the time, which occasionally produces bright moments, because some of the Somalis who've come to this beautiful country have also started to do well.
Right.
And the majority of the people in the current government, the federal government, or even some of the presidents of the mini states that are being created are run by people who are American citizens.
Right.
And therefore the world is now more connected to Somalia than it had ever been.
They've gone back.
They've gone back to do their duty onto their country.
Yeah.
And some of them are doing very well, a very good job. But my interest as a writer is to follow the story of those who have made it out and then gone back.
Yeah.
Or those who, for some reason or another, but usually for terrorist reasons, who are murdered, and then the consequences of that murder.
Right.
Because we usually forget when you hear in the news so-and-so has, died in an explosion, suicide bombing.
Right.
You tend to forget that there are actually people like you and me.
Yeah, with
that
families.
With a family, with children.
Yeah.
And in this novel, Hiding in Plain Sight, my interest was actually to introduce the character R just before dying.
Right. So it begins in violence.
Yes.
And then it's all about the reverberations beyond.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, different people also mourn in a different way. The mourning is also very different. And then there are those who think that they might exploit a vacuum, like a former wife who wishes to reclaim, the children, and who may, initiate the legal process.
And there are those who think they might have in some ways escaped that past, right? I mean, who have left and gone on to create successful lives elsewhere.
Like Bella.
Like Bella in your book, who's created a successful life. So that raises the constant issue of identity, of is one now a citizen of the world or a citizen of the United States? To what extent is one still of Somalia?
Well, it depends on commitment.
Yeah.
political, cultural, and other commitments. And also, unfortunately, those Somalis who've stayed behind and who now filled the vacuum with their presences. Sometimes such persons who don't have a memory of the 60s and 70s Somalia, when Mogadiscio was a cosmopolitan city, Somalia was peaceful.
You know, as you're saying this, I remember us talking about this some years ago. I mean, people just don't even remember, right?
Exactly.
This was a beautiful cosmopolitan place with a lot of cultural life that you grew up in.
Yes. But you see, the thing also is, Somalis, because of the civil war, have now become narrow-minded. Their acceptance of those who are different from themselves horrifies them. It's an anathema, for example, for some of the Somalis who live in Mogadiscio now to accept that a person who is half Italian, half Somali, who speaks Somali, and who is committed to the idea of Somaliness is also just as Somali as they are. But this Bella doesn't belong to the idea of the clan. And the reason is because the country has begun to suffer.
How do you see yourself now?
I see myself exactly as I have always seen myself.
We should say you live in Cape Town,
I live
South
in
Africa.
Cape Town, South Africa,
You
for much
teach
of the year.
part-time here.
Yes, and I travel the world.
Yeah.
But I am a Somali. I was born a Somali. I have remained a Somali and continue remaining a Somali. And yet, I am from the 60s generation. I am a secular person.
Right.
I am anti anything authoritarian, whether it takes the guise, in the guise of Islamic tendencies or authoritarian dictatorships like Siad Barre and so on and so forth. And therefore, I'm still walking the path that I took many, many years ago when I was sentenced to imprisonment, when I was sentenced to death, when I was threatened, my life was threatened. Now my life is threatened for a different purpose. And the reason is because I say I am a secularist.
Yeah.
And that I was born a Muslim. I am a Muslim, but I am a secularist Muslim.
Suddenly that's dangerous in a new way.
It becomes dangerous because these madmen want us to fear.
Yeah. I want to ask you finally about the situation. It's a big question, but the situation of writing in Africa. It's on my mind because I was just in Kenya at the festival in Nairobi, the Story Moja.
Oh, yes.
So I'm sure you're familiar with that.
Yes, yes.
And so it was interesting to see a younger generation of writers from all over Africa, including Somalia, who are, more globally attuned, right? I mean, through the internet, sharing culture, seeing themselves as citizens of the world, but still very much writing Africa.
Yes.
A new Africa.
Yeah.
Do you see that?
I see something quite positive in this.
Yeah.
First of all, they bring new voices, voices that haven't been heard before. They connect us to the rest of the world. They are part of a generation. I belong to the generation in which I still belong to that generation, in which I write everything in longhand first, and then go to the computer. Now, these are people who compose their writing in, and who are twittering all the time.
Right.
Now, their voices are just as valid and valuable as the voices of my generation that are more likely to quote proverbs and African folk tales. Right. And these young people may actually not be able even to quote proverbs and folk tales because they grew up in a different era. Yeah. Now, the other important thing is Africa is multi-ethnic, multi-cultural. cultural,
Yeah, of course.
and the culture that they bring with them of the 21st century is where we're going. And therefore I say to them, move on, go on, enrich us.
Yeah.
And this enrichment, the unfortunate business, of course, is that whereas we've had the best world in terms of Africa, in the sense that, you know, my parents didn't have to pay for schooling from elementary through university. Nowadays, things are very different. Africa has become commercialized, education has become commercialized,
Right.
and the link between the rural area and the city have also been severed.
Right.
And therefore, Africa is becoming, well, in inverted commas, globalized. I don't like the term.
For better and worse.
Sure, yes.
All right, the new novel is Hiding in Plain Sight. Nuruddin Farah, thank you so much for talking to us.
My pleasure.